Welcome to the Summerhill School Media Studies podcast. In this episode, we'll be focusing on the Sweeney. Sweeney was groundbreaking in the 1970s as it introduced many new elements into the police crime genre. Early crime dramas tended to be much less violent than the Sweeney and provided reassurance that society was safe as law and order was being upheld. For example, Dixon of Dock Green, a police procedural drama broadcast from 1955 to 75, focused on a policeman who patrolled his beat and usually dealt with more minor crimes. The Sweeney includes elements of the police procedural subgenre, but also coats from the action genre to create a more dynamic and exciting experience for the audience. There's a focus on complex, violent and organised crime that is not easy to solve. The Sweeney was recorded on 16mm film. The cameras were more lightweight and mobile, so filming could take place outside a studio. Location filming adds to the sense of realism. Many scenes were filmed on London streets and some plots were based on real events. There is more camera movement in the fight sequences, including close-up shots of violence, and this immerses the audience in the action more fully. The dress codes and props establish the 1970s setting. The Ford Consul car became iconic in the Sweeney, and a very similar Cortina was later used in Life on Mars, which borrowed heavily from the Sweeney and used intertextuality as part of its appeal. The use of music also reflects the period and underscores the action, such as the jazz-influenced music as Reagan leaves Jenny's flat in the opening sequence. The language used in the dialogue helps to construct the characters, and some of the phrases became very popular. For example, "We're the Sweeney, son, and we haven't had any dinner." This suggests that the Sweeney or flying squad is well known and connotes a threat, reinforced by the following phrase: "You kept us waiting, so unless you want a kick-in, you tell us where the photographs are." The narrative of this episode begins with a build-up to the crime, Rooker taking delivery of the guns, but the main crime does not occur until much later in the story. Much of the episode is instead spent trying to prevent the crime from taking place. The narrative ends with closure. The crime is prevented, the main criminal is dead, and Reagan is able to relax with his girlfriend and a glass of whiskey. The police force in the Sweeney is shown as a male-dominated organisation with a clear hierarchy. The officers call their bosses Sir, and Reagan, played by John Thor, is reprimanded by a senior officer who says he should have known what was happening sooner. The police officers are constructed as strong and tough males who are not afraid to use violence to get results. Jack Raven is a maverick who believes his methods are necessary. This is shown in the way he threatens suspects and challenges authority. There are many examples of masculine stereotyping, including patriarchal attitudes, heavy drinking, objectification of women and violent behaviour. There is also an obvious loyalty between Reagan and Carter, played by Dennis Waterman, and their relationship is that of a typical detective, hero and sidekick helper. London is represented as a potentially violent place. The gritty urban locations suggest that crime is a problem in society that needs to be solved. There is no use of the tourist imagery of London, such as the famous buildings in the city centre. Women feature as girlfriends, wives and mothers, stereotypically passive roles. The female in the opening sequence, Jenny, is a passive object in the bed whose identity is not established. Although she is independent, her position in the narrative is as Reagan's girlfriend, and she becomes a victim of threat and violence from Kemball's men, who also objectify her. She needs to be rescued and protected by Reagan. The Sweeney ran between 1975 and 1978, broadcast at 9 p.m. on weekday evenings on ITV. The set episode, Ringer, premiered on Thursday the 2nd of January 1975. Video recorders were not available at this time, so audiences could only watch the programme as it was broadcast. As it was shown on a commercial channel, there were 2 breaks for adverts, so the narrative was structured into 3 sections. The scheduling after the watershed shows that the programme was intended for an adult audience, as some of the themes, language and violent action is not suitable for younger viewers. The Sweeney was extremely successful and achieved audience ratings of up to 19 million. This success led Euston to develop many more television dramas, such as Minder and Widows. A 16-disc DVD box set of all episodes of The Sweeney was released in 2004 and was given a 15 certificate by the BBFC for frequent moderate violence. The programme has far-reaching appeal to audiences who might remember the original series and feel nostalgia for The Sweeney, as well as to younger audiences viewing for the first time. To understand The Sweeney, it's important to understand the historical context, the 1970s. The genders were less equal in the society of the 1970s and 1980s than today, and this was reflected in the structure of the police force. According to the Metropolitan Women Police Association, in 1980 there were 90 female detective constables in the Metropolitan Police Force and over 1,400 males. There were very few high-ranking female officers. This is clearly reflected in The Sweeney, where the police force is extremely male-dominated. A female police officer is featured in the set episode, but she is not involved in the investigation. She's sent to look after Reagan's girlfriend Jenny, who has been threatened by Kemball's men. Britain was becoming more racially diverse and multicultural in the 1970s, especially in cities such as London. But along with this was racial discrimination. The media did not fully reflect the multicultural nature of Britain, and minority ethnic groups were underrepresented and at times misrepresented. In the set episode of The Sweeney, for example, there are no characters from minority ethnic groups. The Sweeney was based on the real Flying Squad, a division of the Metropolitan Police that dealt with serious and violent crime. The Flying Squad achieved many successes, but was involved in a corruption case in the 1970s, and some high-ranking officers were jailed for taking bribes. There are hints in the set episode that officers might be open to corruption. Prosser, for example, suggests that Kemball could buy the police off, and Reagan's boss expresses concerns about some of the methods he uses. Socially and politically, the 1970s was a period of upheaval. Economic problems from the decline of manufacturing in Britain led to increased imports. The international oil crisis in 1973, coupled with miners' strikes, resulted in electricity shortages during which television broadcasting ended at 10:30 every night. There were also other strikes by, for example, refuse collectors, ambulance personnel, and postal workers. As you study The Sweeney, you should consider aspects of language, audience, industry, and representation, and how you might tackle those in the exam, and also how you could compare them to Luther, the other set product under the crime drama genre.